So the title of this video is Sony User Tries Nikon Camera. So I thought it might be a good idea to just go over a few of the spec differences between the camera I'm filming on right now, the Sony A7R5 and the Nikon Z8. Now this is not directly a comparison video, but I did think that going over the specs between these two cameras might give good context as to my thoughts on the Nikon system as a whole and also the Nikon Z8. Firstly, they're both 8K cameras, but the Nikon's definitely going to have the edge, being able to record ProRes 8K 422 10-bit internal, as well as 12-bit NRAW internal, whereas the Sony A7R5 is going to be able to record 8K internal, but it's only 420 10-bit, so it's gonna be a lot less color fidelity and no RAW internal. So if 8K and RAW are very crucial to you, potentially the Nikon is going to have an edge. However, that comes at the cost of being kind of data hungry. This thing does not give you much time filming. I have in here a Angelbird 330 gigabyte CF Express B card. And when I went to record in ProRes 4K, I believe I was shooting at 30 frames per second. It was only giving me about 20 to 40 minutes of record time, which is not very much at all. Now, if I switched it back down to just their H.265 codec, that gave me an hour and 40 minutes or so of record time. But the Nikon definitely is data hungry. Both cameras have a full-size HDMI, which Canon could definitely learn from, and also both have 5-axis image stabilization, so no complaints there. In fact, I did throw ND on the Nikon Z8 and did a 1-second exposure just to see if I could possibly handhold it, and from what I can tell, the photo actually held up just fine, and it looks great. So that 5-axis image stabilization is definitely going to be great for photographers. So the Nikon Z8 has completely abandoned the mechanical shutter. It's just not there. It only does electronic shutter, which does max out at 20 photos per second when shooting in raw photo mode. However, when it comes to the Sony A7R5, it is limited to 10 photos per second in either mechanical or electronic shutter, which was definitely a bit surprising when I was researching this video. You would kind of just assume in electronic shutter mode, it could do more than 10 photos per second, but either way, mechanical or electronic, 10 photos per second is the max in the high burst mode on the Sony. Okay, so both cameras and brands are impressive when it comes to specs. In fact, these days you'd be hard pressed to find a camera that's not good. They're all pretty good, and when I shoot with the Nikon Z8, that honestly holds true. Also, can we just appreciate how pretty it is here? East Tennessee, Cade's Cove, not bad. And the footage looks great. I really like how the log footage grades in DaVinci Resolve. Nikon has kind of always crushed it when it comes to colors, and the Nikon Z8 is definitely no exception. The footage does look fantastic. Also, the photo experience on Nikon is fantastic. It does shoot 14-bit RAW photos, same as the Sony, and the quality looks amazing. I think I would just need to get used to how the buttons are laid out a bit more compared to my Sony, so that's gonna be through optimization and changing the custom buttons, so I'm not gonna hold that against the shooting experience of the Nikon Z8. Speaking of ergonomics, the Nikon Z8 body design language is actually pretty awesome. I feel like I'm holding an old school DSLR again, although definitely a bit sleeker. They didn't shy away from making the camera a little extra chunky, which I do appreciate. If I'm being honest, I find that my Sony A7R5 is just a little bit less comfortable than I liked. It's not terrible, there's nothing really inherently wrong with it, but I don't know, when I'm holding the grip, it's not quite as comfortable as what I'm used to with Canon, whereas this Nikon is extremely comfortable. So that is great. By the way, guys, today's video is possible thanks to today's video sponsor, Anker. They sent me this MagGo 3-in-1 charging solution for Apple, which honestly worked perfect on this adventure. I was able to easily charge my AirPods, watch, and iPhone in just this one convenient device, which is particularly nice now that my phone, watch, and AirPods all take a different charging cable. Thankfully, the MagGo fixes that problem for me. It's also very portable, so it fits nicely in about any backpack pocket I have. In my testing, it charged my phone, AirPods, and watch to about 50% power in 30 minutes, which is pretty fast considering it's charging all 3 devices. Also, it can work as like this magnetic phone stand, which is pretty convenient and just a bonus. I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily a feature, but I've been using it this way. I know for me, this has cured my headache with having all these different Apple charging cables. So if you want to fix that for yourself, there'll be a link down below in the description to pick up the MagGo 3-in-1 charger for yourself. But there are still a few hiccups when it comes to Nikon, or at least this specific Nikon Z8. For $4,000 USD, I honestly would expect a higher resolution electronic viewfinder. The viewfinder is only 3.6 million dot resolution, which is honestly comparable to a $1,700 Fujifilm X-T5. For comparison, my Sony A7R5 has a 9.4 million dot resolution electronic viewfinder, which is simply the best viewfinder I've ever used. You would expect the Nikon Z8 for its price point to be at least comparable to the Canon R5 with I think a 5.6 million dot resolution, but this is the one we got. 3.6, it's not that special. Also, the tilt screen on the Nikon Z8 is a bit more delicate feeling than I'd personally like. The first time I flipped out the screen, it made a noise that was a little bit concerning. Here, see if I can get it for you guys. I don't know, maybe you guys heard that. It's definitely something you'd have to feel to understand what I'm talking about. And of course I am comparing this to my Sony A7R5 sensor, which has a similar mechanism going on here. And for some reason, this one just kind of feels like I might break it if I'm not careful. Whereas the Sony A7R5 flip out screen definitely feels a little bit more robust. Also, it does flip all the way around, which makes these talking head shots a lot easier to compose. When I was trying to shoot myself on the Nikon Z8, it is definitely frustrating because the screen doesn't flip all the way around. This is, you get this. It can do that. It's pretty cool, I guess. It needs to flip all the way around. Also, these Nikon menus seem to be a little bit of an oversight. Right now, as they have it, it's just kind of all in one big long list. It doesn't seem to be very organized at all. Not to say that Sony's anything particularly special. In fact, I think Canon probably still takes the cake for the best menu system out there, but they could potentially fix this with a firmware update, so maybe it's not the biggest deal. As of right now, I just don't love it. Now, when it comes to autofocus on the Nikon Z8, honestly, it's pretty dang good. It does seem to favor this slower, more focused, pull-esque aesthetic. However, that could be customized in the settings, so I wouldn't say that this is necessarily better or worse than the Sony. In fact, I just don't have enough time to really test the autofocus between these cameras to say which one is definitively better. Both of them have the different AI tracking modes from people, animals, vehicles. So I'm not gonna say that this is worse, I'm not gonna say that it's better, but I am gonna say that it's good. So what's my conclusion about the Nikon system coming from Sony and formerly Lumix and formerly Canon? Actually, I still use Lumix, but what are my thoughts on the Nikon system? Well, honestly, when it comes to the Z8, I'm very impressed. Honestly, more impressed than I thought I'd be. Now, is this camera going to make me switch to Nikon? No, not necessarily. It's not really the perfect camera for me. Honestly, one of the biggest things is I need a flip screen, and this just isn't doing that for me. Honestly, what I love about Nikon right now is that they are actually a contender in the mirrorless market in 2024. Now, even though the Nikon Z8 isn't the right camera for me right now, potentially the Nikon ZF is. It's this really cool all metal brass knob camera that I'm actually going to be getting my hands on pretty soon. So if you want to see content about the Nikon ZF coming up soon, definitely subscribe so you don't miss out on that. I really hope that you all enjoyed this casual camera talk about the Nikon Z8 from a Sony user's perspective. If you all enjoyed the extra effort that went into this video, please leave me a like, and I will see you all in the next one. Take it easy, guys.